Speaking of New York, by the way, the hottest team in basketball is right here in Brooklyn. The Brooklyn Nets, just a game and a half now out of first place in the East. They're 22-7 since Jacques Vaughn took over, and they've won 11 in a row. They actually have the Spurs at home tonight before a 3-game road trip against Chicago, New Orleans, and Miami. Be interesting to see how long this win streak goes. They come back after that road trip, by the way, for a matchup on TNT Thursday night game on the 12th against Boston, which I'm really, really looking forward to that game. And we've touched on this briefly. I think the really interesting turnaround for them, because given that they have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, their shooters are healthy this year, or for the most part have been healthy and been able to play in a number of games. Joe Harris, Seth Curry, Royce O'Neal, of course, shooting 43% from three. But their offense, I think, is expected to be good. They're 10th overall in defense in the NBA. And that to me is the real surprise.
How much of this do you think is a tribute to Claxton and a tribute to having basically, with Claxton and KD out there, 2 rim protectors on the floor at almost all times?
I think Claxton probably deserves more credit for this turnaround. He's been really good. He's had a very solid season. Still, I think room for improvement, but he's had growth on both ends of the floor. I look at it more, obviously Kevin, I'll touch on his defense in a second, but I look at it more just overall size on the wing, which is something they didn't have last year. Patty Mills was playing a lot of minutes. Obviously, Kyrie when he was in the lineup. But you add Ben Simmons, you add Royce O'Neal, TJ Warren, Watanabe, and then Kevin on the wing. They've got size, they've got length, and I think that matters. I've watched a ton of their games this year, by the way, and Kyrie gets picked on a lot. He gets targeted a lot. And he's going to have, in those matchups where whether it's Luka or Tatum or DeRozan, those ISO creators that target him and manipulate switches to get him on him, he's going to have a size disadvantage. I think he's battled. I really do. I think he's really competed on that end of the floor. But for me, the defensive stuff, it starts with Kevin Durant. And
don't you think that's always been the case in his career, though? Even going
with
back
Kyrie?
to Cleveland, going back to Cleveland, obviously he can't help his size, but he's not somebody who's just getting a bucket and then just kind of not caring about what's happening on the other end, depending on the game, of course, like
right.
the setting and everything.
Yeah, I mean, he's someone who has had to play deep in the playoffs a number of times, and yeah, I think you learn how to compete because. Again, you get to the playoffs or against certain teams, even in the regular season, there's a lot of targeting. And I think Kyrie, for the most part, throughout his career, has competed, especially when it's big matchups and big games. But Kevin on defense has been spectacular. Kevin Pelton of ESPN, I'm sorry, but it's behind a paywall, but Kevin Pelton wrote a great article I think it was right after Christmas. I think it came out on the 26th about Kevin's defense and his mid-range shooting, and just the idea of him sort of at this stage of his career, coming off an Achilles injury a few seasons ago, playing at an MVP level, playing it as a dominant two-way player, and his numbers, whether it's in the paint or on the perimeter, when he's the primary defender, he's at or right near the top in every sort of marker of defensive field goal percentage. And so, to me, their defense relies on his willingness to not only be a star on one end of the floor, but to be a star on the other end. And that's very rare, Tommy.
Yeah. As of today, top 4 Raptor, our favorite stat, or top 4 Raptor players in the NBA, Luka, Jokic, Tyrese, who we'll get to, and Kevin. This is Kevin Durant we're talking about. It's arguably the best scorer of all time, a first ballot Hall of Famer. But do you think that because of how things ended last year a little bit that people just kind of forgot how fucking dominant this dude is?
You know, I don't think people forgot how dominant he is. I think the issue with Kevin at times is the perception of Kevin post Oklahoma City and the decision to go join Golden State, the decision to leave Golden State. Um, Again, we've talked with Kevin about why he claps back on Twitter, and so there's this. I think we live in a bubble of Twitter, of NBA Twitter, where there's like the perception of Kevin, like not necessarily the player. I
Yeah.
think that kind of runs into, unfortunately, the narrative around him, and I don't necessarily think that's fair. But I mean, the one thing I've noticed more so in the last 2 seasons is just his willingness as a passer. He's talked about why he has high turnover nights sometimes because he's seeing 2 or 3 defenders at a time. He gets double teamed, obviously, but it's just willingness to pass. And he's someone, and someone's perfectly articulated this on Twitter the other day, and I can't remember exactly how it was said, but he's someone that you can just, it's weird to say this about one of the best players ever, but you can almost like plug and play him on any team, in any system, and his skill set is so transferable. And it's just like, oh, yeah, he's going to get you 25 to 30 points, 5, 6 rebounds, 5, 6 assists on incredible efficiency. Doesn't matter how he plays or what the team plays like or who his teammates are. He's just that good. I have a great stat, Tommy. Kirk Goldsberry, shout out to him, also of ESPN. So best mid-range seasons ever. This is for high-volume mid-range shooters. This is for any player who shoots a minimum of 10 field goal attempts per game. Last year, Kevin Durant had the second best field goal percentage on high-volume mid-range at 54%. And this year, he's got the best ever at 58.5%. The next closest guy is MJ and Dirk. They each had seasons at 50%. I mean, that's incredible. And we haven't talked about his offense, but we should mention Kyrie has played in 26 of their 36 games, and he's at 26, 5, and 5 on 49% from the field and 91% from the free throw line. Again, the best version of the Nets that we all thought was possible outside of the off the court drama, whatever you want to call it, the coaching changes and all of that. The best version of the Nets, I think, is what we're seeing right here. I want to touch on the MVP conversation in a second because it is pertinent to Kevin. But since 2000, this is really interesting when I think about the Nets and sort of where they are in the landscape of true championship contenders. Since 2000, every NBA Finals winner has been top 5 in either defense or offense, sometimes both, but either defense or offense, except for 2, and they were top 10 in both offense and defense. And I mentioned earlier, the Nets currently 5th in offense, 10th in defense. It's hard for me, given how they've played over the last 29 games, to not consider them a championship contender. Even as far as a week ago, Perk and I had this conversation on First Take about sort of where they fit in. They're probably right now they're a tier 1 team in the Eastern Conference. I don't think you can dispute that. That's how good they are. The full episode of The Old Man and the Three Things is available exclusively on Amazon Music.